Hey everybody, this is Jay from the forum group at Remax. Guys, we know buying and selling a house is stressful, right? I don't need to tell you about that one. But doing both at the same time, that's going to take complexity to a whole nother level, my friends. I promise you that. But, seriously though, if you're looking to buy and sell at the same time, you're going to really need to navigate through this hot seller's market as both the seller and the buyer. Now, you're going to really enjoy the benefits, obviously, of selling your home, right? Because you're going to get top dollar, you're going to get the best terms and conditions that meet your needs, so that way you can move forward to buy a new place. So that's where you're going to really shine and see the benefit from that. But on the buyer side, you're going to be facing the same challenges as everybody else out there. Now, there's really no best way to make the process totally predictable, but thinking it thoroughly and coming up with a good strategy is going to certainly help you with the ups, downs, and what the frigs a little more easy, right? So there are some strategies. I picked three that really, I think the top three that really kind of speak on the best avenue to go. Now, the first one is buying before you sell. That's probably the easiest way to do things. It makes it less complicated for any seller out there that's looking to accept your offer because it's not contingent on you selling, right? And it also kind of makes it a little easier for you to move because now you're not really stressed about buying and selling, closing and moving from one home to another house on the same day. So first two questions is one for yourself. Can I afford to do both? Can I afford, potentially swinging two mortgages for a month or two? And then number two, will the lender allow it? Is your debt to income ratio there where you can buy and sell, buy and then sell? And if both are okay, and yep, you want to do it, and the agents, the lenders gives you the blessing and you can do it, then you got to kind of figure out where you're going to get your down payment from. Now, you have money in the bank, which is great if you do. You can also, if you have a home equity line of credit that you can use that in the interim. And then when you close on your sale, you're basically paying the home equity line of credit off. So those are two avenues you can use for a down payment. And then there's another thing called a bridge loan, which I haven't really seen in a while. But I do know of a couple lenders that have a product out there where, your first step would be to, buy your new house, you close on it, and the minimum down payment required for this program would be 5%. That can be out of your own pocket, or it can actually be a gift from a friend or from a family member. They can use a gift, but the minimum is 5%. You can do more if you want, but 5% is the minimum. Second step would be to, formally list your residence to get it sold. And then once the sale of your home is complete, myself or you would call the lender and let them know that the house was sold. And then we would basically take some of the net proceeds from the sale of your home and we would apply that to a new loan, apply the down payment to the principal of a new loan. The beauty of this program, guys, is that when you open up the new loan after you sell your house, the rate is going to stay the same, which is very important in this market because the rates are very volatile right now. So they're on the up. So if they do go up, at least you're locked into the rate that you initially agreed upon when you went under the contract way back when, if that makes sense. Now, there are obviously some gives and takes, pros and cons, any one of these scenarios. So the pros, I think, for buying first really is you have the ability to take your time to find the right house. You're not feeling pressure because your house is under contract, okay? It makes the offer to a seller a little more desirable because you have nothing to sell, right? So you're not trying to overbid or overcompensate for that fact that you have to sell and basically get the attention of the seller rather, by overcompensating, which would be throwing more money at them or whatever the case may be. Guarantees that you have a house to move into before you sell your house, right? Because you have one already and you're not feeling the pressure of trying to find something, which can rush you into making a decision that you may not, pick to begin with. And you only have to move once, so you only have one expense of moving, whether it's expensive time of you physically moving or obviously money. So those are definitely the pros behind it. Now, The cons, you're gonna have to make 2 mortgage payments for a little bit, right? So that kind of will hurt the pocket a little bit. But bear in mind, if, like, say for instance, you were to close on a house today, your first payment due on your new mortgage is going to be August. Now, don't get me wrong, from the closing to when your next payment is due, from the closing costs, right, they're going to take the interest from the day of closing to the day the next payment is due and pay. So you aren't really paying it, but it's in the form of the closing costs, and that's going to happen regardless of you buying and selling. The day of the closing prior, up to that next time, you're going to be paying some interest. So there's no way around that. So yeah, I wouldn't really stress about that one. It might make it a little harder for you to qualify for a loan because you have the old mortgage and you're still making the payments on that, and the lender's going to calculate it as if you never sold the house to begin with, because they want to make sure that you can afford both of them, right? And then if, it could potentially lead to a financial strain, which could, in effect, allow you to accept a lower offer on your home because you're feeling pressure now because you have 2 mortgages, right? But what we'll do first and foremost, before we even decide which avenue and what strategy would work best, is I want to let you know what I think the value of the property is. Right? It's going to be competitive. It's going to be competitive. It's not going to be on the high side of things. It's going to be competitively marketed, so that way you can sell it as quick as possible for the top dollar amount. And then we're going to figure out what your bottom line is, what's your break even, what do you need to make in order to make this move from A to B, and see if it's even worth it or if it is feasible. If you have a $10,000, between selling and from between asking price and actual offer price, it's going to be very tight and difficult to do. And if we need to pivot, we're only going to be able to basically reduce the price by $10,000. So that could be an issue. So we're going to get all the information as possible up front, so that way we can really get a really good picture of the financial situation at hand. Now, the second option is to sell your house before you buy. And I think this option, in my opinion, is the riskiest out of the 3, because you're basically homeless until you find another house, right? But it does, depending on your level of risk. And I'm going to give you some information so that way you can kind of make your own educated decision on what you want to do. But some sellers are okay with selling their house before they even have the next move in mind. So if that's the case with you, the avenues and strategies for this type of option would be to rent a house or rent a property while you're waiting to find your next place. That can be its own challenge because, it might be hard to find somebody that wants to rent you month to month, right? Second option would be to move in with a friend or family member, which is all well and good, but, if it's an extended stay and, you're on top of each other, that could start, putting a little stress on your relationships, which I'm sure will bounce back, right? Because if you got a strong bond, then, it's just a minor aggravation, but it's still aggravation nonetheless. And the third option sometimes is getting a rent back, a lease back from the actual buyer. And that would have to be a perfect storm of the buyer being able to do something like that, right? Because if they're FHA, technically there's a finite amount of time that they have until they have to move into their property. But I digress with that. So those are really your 3 options right there. And then I do have some clients that they're basically waiting for the prices to come a little lower and then buy again, or others are considering maybe a lower cost area in general, so that way they can maximize on their profit and what they have. But regardless of which, I think if you're going to take this step, there are some tips to keep in mind. Like if you're going to request a lease back, which can definitely provide some extra time for you. And what that's going to basically do is you can ask the buyer to give you an additional 60 days at a cost, of course, to let you find a new property. Or if you're already in the contract and there are delays, it gives you a little breathing room as well. You can place just your personal items in storage, right? And just basically rent, or like I mentioned, live in a friend and family's place. Or you can buy without the contingency of selling. So you already have a spot in place. You start looking, but you haven't closed on the sale of your property yet. you find something, you go into contract, but you make it not contingent on you selling. So what that's going to do is, first and foremost, is going to make the offer a lot stronger, right? And the seller is going to consider you maybe over somebody else because it's not contingent on you selling. And what that does is it gives you, it makes you stick out a little more as far as the offer is concerned. And if you did put that contingency on there, you may have to incentivize the seller to take your offer, and that can be in the form of a larger deposit. That can be in the form of obviously a higher sales price, waiving inspections, which I wouldn't recommend. Coming up with a personal guarantee if the appraisal doesn't match what the actual sales price is. So those are all things that you might have to do in order to stick out a little more if you have that contingency in place. Now, obviously, the pros of selling first, prevents you from having 2 mortgage payments while you're waiting to sell your own home. It makes it easier to qualify for a mortgage, right? Because you're not going to have that existing mortgage payment on your credit. And then some of the cons, you could be stuck without a house for an extended period of time, depending on how long it takes you to actually find a new place. You can have an additional cost or charge because of the storage. And obviously you're going to move twice, so you're going to have the cost associated with 2 moves. And the values of homes are going to still continue to increase for the time being, but so is the interest rates. So if it takes you 4 to 5 months to find something, the cost associated with it's going to be more than it was today. So if that makes sense. Now, with this strategy, we would have to gauge it. And the way we would gauge it is, we'd set you up in a search. How many houses are you seeing that you actually want to take a look at? Is it 1 a month? Is it 5 a week? Is it 2 a week? Obviously, the more homes you're physically seeing, the better chances of you liking a house or homes and putting an offer on it. I mentioned in the past, with this marketplace, you're probably going to lose out on a couple offers, right? So it might take you a little time even to get an offer accepted in this marketplace. So if you're seeing 1 home a month and it's going to take you 6 months or 7 months to even get a house in the contract, number 2 might not be for you. But again, I'm just preparing you. I'm giving you the information needed so that way you can make your own informed decision. You're a grown adult. So I'm just, gearing you up so that way you can kind of make that decision. So the third option, which is usually the option that most folks pick, is to sell and buy at the same time. Now keep in mind, whatever option that you pick, there are always going to be stresses involved, but this one's going to be more of a juggling act. But as the market kind of continues to cool and we start to see a cool down of the marketplace, this may be more of an option as well. In my experiences, I've had some very positive outcomes from clients, and I've had some, outcomes that are not so nice, meaning that my clients keep getting rejected because, they're in the process or they have something to sell. But either way, it's very important to have all your ducks in a row on this one, guys. So if you do decide to list before if you decide to list when the offer is accepted on a new purchase, then what we're going to really need to do is have your home ready, right? Get your pictures taken, have all your marketing materials ready to go, so that way when an offer is accepted on a purchase, you're ready to rock and roll within 24 hours to get your house on the market. You can also list your home and find a house at the same time, which is self-explanatory, but realistically in this market, you're probably going to get the house in your house in the contract before you actually find something. And then what we really need to do is, if it's subject to you selling, is we need to put a subject to the buyer selling clause in there. And it's going to be pre-negotiated. Obviously, what I'm going to try to do, best case scenario, is to just basically keep it open-ended. Like, it's subject to you, selling your primary residence before you can purchase. And if they agree upon that, you sign it, great. And then it's just we're waiting for you to get under the contract, obviously within a certain period of time. Realistically, we're hoping for 30, 60 days to find and close, most likely 60 days to find and close. So that way you have time, right, to market and get it under contract. If the listing agent's savvy, they're going to say, well, you know what, if it's something to them buying, then we need to really have some kind of clause or kick-out clause in effect to protect the seller of the home that you're buying. So what that would really look like is, you would have a certain timeline to get your house on the contract. It could be a week, it could be 2 weeks, it could be a month. That's all negotiable. The second thing would be, if the seller does get, well, because what's going to happen is the seller, upon signing a purchase sales agreement, is still going to market the house and still try to get another offer on the property. And if they do market and they do open houses and they get a buyer that's ready, willing, and able to purchase, that may not have that subject to selling clause, then what the seller is going to do is they're going to come back to you and say, hey, look, we did find a buyer. You have 24 hours, 48 hours, 72 hours, that's negotiable, time to let me know or let us know if you can move forward with purchasing the home without selling, or if you can, we need proof of that, or you're going to have to back out. The contract's going to be null and void. You'll get your deposit back, and we're going to move forward with this new buyer. So that's another that's another option as well. Now, the other options and the timelines that you're going to see on that addendum are when an appraisal is going to happen, when an inspection is going to happen, when is the commitment going to begin, when's the commitment deadline, and when is the closing date. So that's all negotiable depending on when the house actually goes in the contract. And what I'm talking about as far as the inspection is concerned, play it out. You get under contract for a purchase. You have that kick-out clause where it's potential where you're going to be kicked out anyway. So do you want to run the risk of starting the transaction as the purchase sales agreement dictates, sign the contract, and go for your home inspection, potentially spending $500-$600, maybe more if it's a multifamily, to get booted out, and then you're out the money? So we can start the timeline as inspections once your house is in the contract, but that's all negotiable, and we can discuss that when it actually comes to that time. But those are really the suggestions. And regardless of the purchase and sale, I'm going to be very specific on the wording, so that way it's subject to you buying and it's subject to you selling, so that way you're not homeless. Now, the pros to this option is you're guaranteed to have a new home. You only have to, again, pay for moving expenses once. The whole process starts at the same time and finishes at the same time, which is going to keep you highly motivated. And the cons, you're gonna need to move out and move into your new home on the day of the closing, relatively speaking. Some people opt to take a couple days and live, stay at a hotel. But either way, you have to be packing out of your house, right? Don't get me wrong, you can negotiate some rent backs and things of that nature to give you a little more time to move. But again, that's a little more complicated. Again, we want as clean as possible. You might feel pressure of buying a home if your house goes on the contract quicker. So you might, make, a hasty decision on buying a home that you may not necessarily want to purchase because you have somebody that's, already in the contract to buy your house. And, when you're making it subject to you selling, you have a higher chance of offers being rejected because of that aspect. But at the end of the day, it's really a personal decision on what you are going to do as far as choosing the right option for you guys. But I think with this information, you can make an informed decision that really fits you best. And of course, it's not a perfect scenario. Life isn't perfect, right? So there are going to be hurdles, and there's going to be stuff that's thrown at us that we have to pivot and move. And again, this isn't all going to be explained in a 10-15 minute video. So when it comes time to really pick an option, then we'll sit down and really discuss each option to death to make sure you understand it in great detail, so that way you can make that informed decision. So don't get stressed. I know it is stressful, but try not to get stressed too much when you're buying and selling a home. There are options, and hopefully this conversation, this video kind of enlightens you and, kind of lessens the stress that you're going to have with the process. And that's really all it comes down to. I've helped, hundreds of buyers and sellers, and, it's not perfect, but, where there's a will, there's a way. And if everybody agrees upon it and everybody's working towards the same goal of closing and moving on with life, I generally see a positive outcome. So hopefully this information has been helpful for you guys. Until next time, be good.